Hey guys, it's Dave Salvadore of Blue Line Gaming. I wanted to start a series where I could help new hobby miniature gamer painters learn some basic skills to get their miniatures on the table quickly. This is a table ready series. It's nothing advanced. If you want something awesome, that's not this video. If you want something that'll look good on the table from arm's length away, this is a perfect video for you. I thought it'd be fun to paint some of the original HeroQuest miniatures. They're very simple miniatures, and you should be able to learn some of these basic skills by watching me paint them. So let's get right into that. I'm going to show you how I painted these minis to be table ready with 3 simple steps. For step 1, I'm going to show you how to prime. Step 2, I'm going to show you how to base coat. And step 3, I'm going to show you how to shade. The basic supplies I'm using in this video I will share in the description below. An X-Acto blade, skeleton bone primer, a few miniature painting brushes, various colored paints and shades, something to wash out your brushes, and a wet palette, and an old paint rag. Since you're a new painter, you don't need to have everything all at once, just start with what you have. Miniatures usually have a thin mold line that you'll see on the model. You can use the back of the X-Acto to scrape off some of those mold lines or carefully cut off some of the big chunks. This isn't necessary, but it does make your model look nicer. I'm using a piece of foam board here to cut out a little strip. You can also use a tongue depressor or paint stir stick. I'm going to use a piece of fun tack to stick down the miniatures to this little board for priming. This will allow me to move the model around so I can prime it from different angles. For step 1 of priming, the first thing you want to do is shake that can really good for about 1 or 2 minutes. Now, a question you might have is, what color primer should I get? You want the primer to act as an undertone or a color that helps you while painting. So what I like to do is ask myself, what is the main color of this miniature? So for example, when I painted this Juggernaut, he's mostly brown, so I primed him with brown because you want that primer to work for you and not against you. Since these are undead characters and they're skeletons and mummies and zombies, I used a skeleton color because that's a good overall color for all 3 of them. For the first layer, lightly dust on a coat and then leave it alone. One of the temptations you'll have is to try to prime the model all at once. Try to avoid this if you can and do 3 or 4 really light layers. Here I'm rotating the model to hit it at a different angle. Just take your time so you can get a nice even coat. Here you see some spots that I didn't get primer in. One of the cool things about this Army Painter primer is that they have a matching brush on that's 100% match to the primer color. So I used a little bit of this paint, thinned down with a little bit of water, and lightly brushed it on to fill in any of those missing spots. Now that the models are primed, we're ready to move on to step 2. For step 2, we're going to start to base coat our model. Before you start painting, you need to figure out a way to hold that model so you can move it around. This is a Games Workshop miniature holder. You can use a paint bottle with a piece of fun tack on the top to stick the model on, or you could even use an old wine bottle cork and stick the model on with fun tack as well. The idea is to be able to hold the miniature more comfortably and not have your hand become a claw. It's also easier to maneuver and manipulate the model with a bigger handle. I have a couple colors on my wet palette that I'm going to mix together to make my own mummy flesh color. For this step of the painting process, all you're doing is painting on thin layers of a base coat for each area of the model that you want a flat color. Now I'm mixing a few colors to make a zombie flesh base coat. For the handles of the weapons, I just use a straight brown color to paint the handles. Then I used another brown to paint the pants of the zombie. Here's where you can see why it's important for you to be able to manipulate the model in your hand. When painting metal, I found that it's best to have an undertone of black and then paint your metallic colors on top. So here I'm painting black, and then once that dries, I take a gunmetal color and I can put it on the black and you can see it much easier. Since this is a table-ready miniature, I'm just going to paint the base gray. In the next video, I'll show you a much more interesting way to handle a HeroQuest miniature base. Now that the miniatures have been base coated, we're ready to move on to step 3. For step 3, I'm going to be using various shades and contrast paints from Citadel. Back in the day, we had watered down acrylic paints and inks and things like that, and they were not very good. I wish I'd had these when I was a younger painter. If you're going to get into the hobby of painting miniatures, these are a really good investment. You're going to see how you can get great results with very little work. So here you can see I'm applying a watered down skeleton contrast paint, and it just goes into all the nooks and crannies and really does a lot of work for you. And here I'm using a nightshade blue color to bring out some of the details in the mummy's skin. For the zombie, I use this green contrast paint. I thinned it down with water. These contrast paints can be pretty intense, so a little water makes them a lot more like a wash. And this sepia shade is going to be perfect for the bandages on the mummy. And while using shades and contrast paints, it's not a big deal if you put too much on. Just blot off your brush on your rag and then sop up any excess shade. And if you don't like the color of something, just go ahead and paint right over it. For example, this zombie here, I wanted to make his vest more of a dark gray. The next thing is to use some of this earth shade to darken the wood parts of the handles. That sepia shade I used earlier is perfect for washing down the metal parts of the weapons to make them look rusty. This Reikland shade is perfect for doing things like skin, but also for this reddish brown pair of pants. One of the cool things about these shades is that if you don't think it's dark enough after it dries, you can always do another layer. For example, here I'm using a camo shade color to go back over the zombie's skin to darken it. And one of the final shades I'm going to use is something called Nuln Oil. And it's perfect for darkening things down like this gray vest and also the bases. With these 3 simple steps, you can get your minis on the table quickly and ready for gaming. Hope that video helped you guys out. In part 2, I'm going to take those same miniatures and make them look a little bit nicer. Stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, keep painting, keep gaming.